It was sometime in 2013. It was 4:45 in the afternoon and I was at the Ministry of Education. It was 15 minutes before work ends and there was a long queue near the front door. And I wondered what the people in line were waiting for. I walked closer and in front of the line was a punch clock. The people in line were waiting for 5 o'clock to happen so that they could clock out for the day. So yeah, people waiting 15 minutes in line, actually doing nothing. How did people become so disempowered that it was better to wait in line than to do something useful? If you work in the Ministry of Education, your job is super important. You hold the fate of the future of Malaysia in your hands. Yet here, it was better to wait in line than to do something useful. I don't think we can blame the ministry's employees. I blame our leadership structures and our theories of leadership that came from the industrial era. We are still using the same old leadership principles from the industrial era to lead our government, our companies, and our schools. The whole world has changed, but how we lead hasn't. It's time we put to good use what we learned this past 100 years about leadership and human psychology. Punch clocks are the relics of the leadership principles that came out of the industrial era. Punch clocks are basically saying, I don't trust you, you might not come to work. The leadership principles we use that came from the industrial era are what I like to call leadership by fear. Fear that you might not come to work, fear that you are lazy, fear that you won't get work done. Thankfully, the world is slowly moving away from leadership by fear to what I like to call leadership by trust. Take Holacracy, for example, the leadership method used famously by Tony Hsieh in Zappos that was bought by Amazon in 2009 for $1.2 billion. Holacracy is the opposite of leadership by fear. Holacracy is leadership by trust. Learning about Holacracy, you'll find that it is easy to trust people when you have systems in place to distribute power and to distribute accountability. Here's what Holacracy is, taken from the website www.holacracy.org. Holacracy is a new way of structuring and running your organization that replaces the conventional management hierarchy. Instead of operating top-down, power is distributed throughout the organization, giving individuals and teams more freedom to self-manage, while staying aligned to the organization's purpose. This means that people within a holacratic organization are given freedom and autonomy, and with that, trust. The key phrase here is distribution of power. Holacratic organizations believe that when people are given autonomy and responsibility, people will rise up to meet or exceed expectations. Rather than waiting for management or the CEO to decide, teams that are closest to the front lines are given the power to make decisions. Decisions that cannot be outvoted by management. In a larger organization, the problem is that people lower down the hierarchy cannot make decisions, especially without permission from someone on top. Here's a true story. A friend was doing research in schools and he told me that he once saw a science teacher teaching science. Great! That's his job. Until he realized that his teacher was teaching science to a class of illiterate students who couldn't read and write. The reason? This teacher wasn't given the autonomy to do what was right for his students. He was shackled by KPIs to teach science. His promotion was based on teaching science, so he had to cover the science syllabus. This teacher should have been given the autonomy to teach what the students needed most. In this case, it's not science, it's English, Bahasa Melayu, to read, write, speak. But we are scared. Scared because we think that if we don't tell people what to do and put them in a short leash, they won't work. But people can be autonomous and they can achieve far more than we give them credit for. We just need to learn how to build systems that encourage autonomy and action. We just need to be more like cities. When cities double in size, personal productivity increases by 15%. Simplistically, this is because more people means more resources are available. However, when an organization increases in size, productivity goes down. Why is that? It's useful to know the difference. In a city, you are autonomous. The city doesn't tell you what you can or cannot do. The city doesn't boss you around. You don't have to get approval to buy a car. There are laws, of course, but you're free to connect, to talk, to collaborate, to decide, and to do. On the other hand, in a bureaucratic organization, you cannot simply talk to your boss's boss. You cannot decide what to do without your boss's approval, and you cannot decide customer service procedure without first pitching it to a committee made of upper management, who themselves are not in the best position to decide on matters of customer service, because unlike you, upper management are not in the front lines. In a bureaucratic organization, frontline staff, the ones closest to the problem, the teachers, the customer service representative, the gardener, they are the ones who knows how to solve the problem, but they cannot solve problems first without first maneuvering past complex office politics and hierarchy and power structures. In a bureaucratic organization, it's hard to get things done, and people rather wait 15 minutes in line at the punch clock to go home. But in a holacratic organization, it's a different story. Frontline staff are given the power to dictate change that even the CEO cannot veto. Take our science teacher, for example, who was teaching science to a group of illiterate students. Why can't he set his own responsibilities and his own KPIs together with his fellow teachers? Why can't he teach English or Bahasa Melayu to illiterate students? If the science teacher could have taught the children to read and write, imagine how these children's lives could have been changed. They would now be literate. They would now have a real shot in life, rather than a life destined for struggle and poverty. Here's how holacracy works. I'll compare business as usual versus holacracy. Business as usual means that people's roles are fixed. There's a rigid organizational structure, while holacracy means an organizational structure that is constantly evolving, and people can choose the roles that best uses their talents. Business as usual means that power is centralized on the CEO, while holacracy results in a local and distributed seat of power. Business as usual means that managers are bottlenecks for decision making, while holacracy has a clear structure for distributing decision making. Business as usual means long, painful meetings with little or no structure, while holacracy means focused, quick meetings that get things done. Another true story. A school library had a malfunctioning air conditioner and fan, so students no longer use the library. It's hot, right? It's Malaysia. What's more, that aircon and fan had stopped working 7 years ago. The school could not replace the sanity encouragement devices because, wait for it, they couldn't get permission from the higher ups in the food chain, management chain. And there was no budget. The school couldn't even raise their own funds to replace the sweat reduction machines because even if they had the money, it was not the school's property. It was the ministry's. So they couldn't simply replace it. Then there was the case of a school putting up a solar panel on the school hall. The school got into trouble with the Ministry of Education because they were not allowed to do modifications without approval. Does the school really need permission to reduce their own electricity costs? Wouldn't it be great if schools had control over the entire school budget, control over salaries and promotions, over hiring? Wouldn't it be great if teachers had control over what to teach, based on the needs of the students? Wouldn't it be great if students had control over what to learn, just like how the children at Acton Academy has the power to decide what to learn and when to learn it? In the old days, the Ministry of Education found it hard to make change because people at the bottom have little control and power, and the people on top have very little connection to the real problems on the ground. It's time we give our students, our teachers, and our administrators the power to change things in their own schools. To get control of our educational outcomes for our country, we first have to let go of control, to trust, and to do it with new age leadership strategies like holacracy. If you'd like to learn more about holacracy, link below. I'll be creating new videos like this every week, so follow or subscribe. If you like this video, thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments how you think we could transform education for all children.